Hello you gorgeous beautiful people, this is Chris from TechSpert and I'm here with two of the best value mid-range smartphones going into 2019. Here on the left you've got the Honor V20 flagship phone. It's not been officially launched here in the UK, so we don't know the exact UK pricing, but it's likely to come in at around the sort of £450 price point. And here on the right we've got Xiaomi's Pocophone F1. It's a few months old now. You can grab it here in the UK for around the £350 mark. Both pack premium specs and fantastic features, but which one might be best for you? Let's do a full side-by-side of everything you need to know. And don't forget, for more comparisons and more on the latest and greatest mobile tech, to poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, it's not too surprising that the two phones could both be described as hand-filling. They're both over 6 inches. The Honor V20 has actually got the bigger screen at 6.4 inches diagonally, whereas the Pocophone F1 at 6.18 inches. So not exactly compact in comparison. As you see, if you stick them side by side, they are basically the same height, the same girth and everything as well. And the reason for that is the fact that the Pocophone has slightly thicker bezels. They are still relatively skinny, thankfully, but obviously the Honor V20 pretty much eliminates all of those bezels. It's about 92% screen on that front panel, whereas in the case of the Pocophone, you do have a slightly thicker bezel down below, and of course you've got that big fat tash of a notch up top as well. And that's something that the Honor V20 pretty much manages to eliminate. Instead, you've just got this dinky little pinhole camera effect over in the top left corner. Flip them around to the rear, and we have to say that Honor's handset definitely continues to impress us more than the Pocophone. As you can see here, the V20 sports a glass finish compared with the sort of bog standard basic plasticky finish here on the Pocophone. As you see there, you get a lovely funky lighting effect here on the Honor V20. As you can see, it produces a V pattern as it catches the light just so. And we really love this sapphire blue shade as well. You can also pick it up in a dreamy blue shade, whatever the hell it's called. It's a lighter blue basically. Or you can get it in black if that's your bag. But definitely gives off a more premium feel than, as I say, the sort of the polycarbonate-y, just kind of basic design of the Pocophone. Definitely screams budget, and as you can see here, we've got a couple of little marks on it as well, so it's not the toughest of materials. You'll definitely want to treat it with respect if you don't want it to get all marked up. That said, neither phone sports water resistance, so you will need to be careful if you're doing the washing up, anything around water. If we head down below, you'll see that both phones use a bit of Type-C USB for charging back up, and up top you've thankfully got a nice bit of 3.5mm headphone jack action as well. And on the Honor V20 you even get a bit of IR blaster action, which is quite rare now in 2019. Rounding off the physical features is the rear mounted fingerprint sensor. It's actually kind of built into the camera grille here on the Pocophone, which we're not massive fans of. We do occasionally sort of find ourselves smudging the camera lens as we're reaching for that fingerprint sensor. Thankfully it's well separate here on the Honor V20. The Honor V20 generally slightly more accurate and responsive than the Pocophones, but to be fair, it rarely fails on the Poco. It's still pretty good. No complaints when it comes to those displays either. It's an IPS panel on both the V20 and the Pocophone F1, Full HD plus resolution as well, so as you can see there, tiny text and everything, nice, legible, perfect clarity, no worries. If you dive on into the settings, you can sort of configure the display output as well. So for instance, dive into color mode and you set on vivid on the V20. You can knock it back to normal if you want slightly less punchy colors, but we quite like the vivid output. And you can play around with the color temperature again, similar sort of thing here on the Poco. You've got the reading mode here on the Pocophone and the eye comfort mode here on the V20. Both of them are schedulable. Schedulable, is that a word? It is now. So you can have that turned on automatically in the evenings and it just makes it nice and easy on the eye, filters the blue light. You notice that on that vivid mode, colours here on the V20 are slightly more punchy, slightly more in your face than they are on the Pocophone. The likes of these oranges and the pinks, they really, really stand out. But not to a sort of an artificial degree or anything like that. They do look rather nice, but as I say, if you're not a fan of those bold colours, you can dial it down on demand. But certainly in terms of the clarity of the visuals and everything, they're easily a match for one another. Then of course you do get that proper full view experience here on the V20 with only that dinky little pinhole camera there, which you barely even notice, to be honest, after a little while. As of course you do get that intrusive notch here on the Poco. As for the actual audio output of these speakers, you do actually get a dual output here on the Pocophone F1, although the output from the top speaker is rather tinny compared with the more powerful output down below, and it's only really this right speaker that sort of outputs the proper volume. Decent volume, obviously the quality is a bit tinny as you'd expect from a smartphone speaker, but it's alright for, just watching a bit of YouTube, something like that. In the case of the V20, it only outputs via this dinky little bottom speaker, and the volume ain't great, to be perfectly honest, so if you're in a noisy environment, you're going to probably struggle. So what about the actual software experience? Well, you've got a nice bit of Android Pie running right here on the V20, the latest version of Google's OS. And the good news is you also get Android Pie running right here on the Pocophone F1 as well. It's fully updated. But of course, the overall experience is slightly different on both smartphones because they are running their own overlay. You've got a bit of Magic UI version 2.0.1 here on the V20, and it's Xiaomi's own MIUI for Poco, as you can see there in brackets, right here on the Pocophone F1 version 10.1. This is actually a slightly different version of MIUI compared to what you might get on some other Xiaomi smartphones. So for instance, you do actually have access to an app store, which is awesome. So you can get all your apps tidied away. They don't have to be cluttered there on the desktops, which is also an option here on Magic UI as well. Now, one of the best parts of Android Pie, at least in our opinion, is the fact that you've got those gesture navigations, and you do get full support for that in both the Pocophone and right here on the V20 as well. That just allows you to ditch the navigation dock down below, and as you can see, you can just swipe up from the bottom of the screen to dismiss an app. You can swipe up and hold in order to call up the recent apps menu, and if you're actually in an app, you can just do swipey in order to go back. However, both Magic UI and the Pocophone MIUI add their own bonus features on top of Android, and quite a lot of them do work really nicely. So for instance, you've got a one-handed mode in both cases. This just allows you to, as you can see, minimize the display just to make everything much easier to handle. Just a quick swipe across the navigation dock does the job. Of course, if you ditch that navigation dock, it's still quite easy to access here on the V20. It's just a swipe from the center down to the corner. It's a bit more tricky, unfortunately, here on the Pocophone. You've got to basically use this quick ball feature, which is a bit to be perfectly honest. Plenty of other great stuff in there as well though. So for instance, you've got great facial recognition on both of these phones. And this facial recognition immediately starts scanning for your gorgeous mug as soon as you tap that power button. And as you can see, it's nice and swift and responsive on both the Pocophone and the V20. And they've both got a raise to wake feature as well, so you can just literally pick up your phone and it'll immediately start scanning for your face, and boom, you're into it again. Now I could probably spend a good half an hour going through both Honor's Magic UI and the Pocophone MIUI and sort of discussing the differences and the benefits of both. Overall, basically they offer quite a nice user experience, but I would say that the Magic UI is my preferred of the two. The settings is just a lot more nicely laid out. Everything's a bit more logical and a bit more helpful. You kind of have to do a bit of digging in MIUI in order to find certain efforts, and some things like the one-handed mode aren't quite as easy to use if you, for instance, ditch the navigation dock and use the gestures instead. But at least you do thankfully get that app store with this version of MIUI, which you don't on the standard version. So what about the all-important matter of performance? Well, neither of these smartphones definitely disappoints in that area. In the Honor V20, you've got Huawei's Kirin 980 chipset, nice, fresh and new for the end of 2018. So this is one of the very first smartphones outside of the Mate 20 that we've seen it in. It's backed by the 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. This is the 6 gig model, and I found that is absolutely perfect for getting really nice smooth everyday performance. Apps just load up instantly, as you can see with a quick tap. You're really not hanging around at all, and it's very rare to see any kind of stuttering or stammers. Here on the Pocophone F1, it's Qualcomm's excellent Snapdragon 845, and again, it's just buttery smooth performance throughout, helped along by, again, the 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, which you get pre-installed. This again is the 6 gig version, and again, no problems whatsoever. As you can see, nice and smooth. Now, unfortunately, I can't do a benchmark comparison because Honor smartphones have recently started blocking the likes of Geekbench. Definitely a bit of strokey beard action, not really sure what's going on there, but we can definitely testify to the fact that Kirin 980 is great. If you want to play the popular games like PUBG Mobile, that is not a problem. And as you can see, the graphics are set by default to high frame rate and nice strong graphics there and everything as well, so you get plenty of detail packed in there. As we can see, if we just dive out of the settings, go back into the game, there you go. As you can see all the fine detail of the island from up on high. And I've had no problem playing full games on both of these smartphones. You do get a nice smooth frame rate in both cases, even on that high detail level. Of course, it's helped along by the GPU Turbo 2.0 here on the Honor V20. Works for a handful of games, including PUBG Mobile, and that just helps to maintain that consistent frame rate, so you pretty much never see a stutter or a stammer here on the V20. And thanks to those 845 smarts here on the Pocophone F1, it's basically the same story. There you go, nice crisp, colourful visuals, and as you can see there, buttery smooth as well. Lovely stuff. There's good news too as far as the battery life is concerned. You'll easily get a couple of days of use out of either of these smartphones, even if you're hammering them sort of fairly hard, you know, regular web checks, email checks, plenty of instant messaging, camera use, all the rest of it. It's only if you start diving into the likes of PUBG Mobile and full-on Skype video calls that you'll notice the battery's starting to drop more significantly. But even then, you should make it through a full day. course, you've got all your usual features in order to cull any background apps that are killing your battery life. And you've got Huawei's usual performance mode and power saver mode on board here with the Magic UI. And both pretty fast at charging back up again. The supercharge here on the V20 seems to be slightly nippy. You get over half a charge from just 30 minutes, but you get the quick charge over here on the Pocophone as well, and that works a treat. And as for the storage space, you do get a choice on both of these smartphones. It starts off at 64 gigs. Here on the Pocophone F1, you can also pick it up in 128 all the way up to 256. Meanwhile, over here on the V20, the base model is 128, but you also get a choice of 256 as well. There doesn't appear to be any expandable storage here on the V20, however, whereas you do get the option of slipping in a micro SD memory card here on the Poco. And when it comes to the camera hardware, it's a very different story on these two phones. The Honor View 20 actually uses a single lens setup. It's a 48 megapixel sensor, so it definitely makes up for it in terms of detail levels. Whereas on the Pocophone F1, it's a dual lens setup, so 12 megapixel primary lens backed by a 5 megapixel depth sensor. Yeah, f1.8 aperture here on the Honor View 20, f1.9 on the Pocophone. We definitely found that the View 20 is better at those low light shots. That said, the lack of a depth sensor for those portrait shots means that occasionally the background blurry effects on those portrait pictures aren't quite as good, whereas on the Pocophone they always come out really nicely. You do, however, get a second lens of some description here on the View 20. It's actually a time of flight lens, so that can be used to accurately measure distances. But unfortunately at the moment it doesn't seem to do absolutely anything at all. It's something that's going to come into play, I guess, if Honor manages to put out an update. We've been promised some camera features that will allow you to do all kinds of crazy 3D animation stuff with your besties, but as I say, at the time I'm shooting this video, it does absolutely naff all. We dive on into the camera apps, you'll see it's quite a different experience there as well, though they do have a similar sort of range of features. So for instance, you dive straight into the auto photo mode, you do have an AI mode, as you can see here, Huawei's AI mode on the View 20, and of course you've got the MIUI AI modes here on the Pocophone. Notice very little difference here on the Pocophone F1 with that AI mode enabled and disabled. Whereas here on the View 20, it does actually shoot slightly more bolder colours on occasions, and it does apply some of those sort of more filtery, grainy effects when necessary. You do get a full Pro mode if you know what you're actually doing. That just allows you to play around with the likes of the white balance, the ISO levels, the shutter speed in order to get a very precise kind of result. As previously mentioned, of course, you do have a portrait mode on both of these smartphones as well. This does actually include studio light and effects here on the View 20, but they're a bit crap, so I definitely stay clear of them. I did mention the low light shots before. Here on the View 20, they are generally better, can suck up a bit more detail with less grain than on the Pocophone F1, and deals better with contrast as well. But you also get Huawei's excellent new night mode here on the View 20, first introduced on the P20 Pro. And that just takes a long exposure shot, as you can see there, ticking over several seconds, and the results are really nice and bright and crisp and very, very impressive indeed. Not completely infallible, occasionally you will get a bit of oversaturation if you're shooting a brightly lit monument at night, say for instance, but on the whole does a very nice job. Unfortunately, there's no night mode to speak of just yet, at least here on the Pocophone F1, but we are promised one in February, so stay tuned for an in-depth look at that. As for the video, you can shoot up to 4K resolution footage on either of these phones, as you can see there, and you can also shoot full HD as well at either 30 frames per second here on the Pocophone F1 or 30 or 60 frames per second here on the View 20. Image stabilization is sort of okay here on the Pocophone. It's a pretty decent job even at that 4K level, but it's definitely improved here on the View 20 where you get nice smooth results even when you're shooting at Ultra HD. Go check out my full camera reviews of both the Pocophone F1 and the Honor View 20 in order to see all my photo and video samples, and then you'll be able to make your own mind up. As for those front-facing cameras, there's a 25 megapixel snapper here on the View 20 and it's a 20 megapixel on the Pocophone. I have to say the results are perfectly fine on both of these smartphone snappers. They generally deal fairly well with contrast. Again, probably slightly better on the View 20, but overall they'll both do the job for your Instagrams and all of that. And of course you can get a bit of portrait action on the go as well, which again just sort of blurs out the background. See there, it's even blurring out the camera here on the old Pocophone. So that in a nutshell is the Honor View 20 versus the Pocophone F1. Overall I have to say the View 20 is my favourite of the two. It looks nicer. I prefer the Magic UI to Pocophone's MIUI, and the camera tech overall as well, especially with the likes of that night mode, definitely prefer on the View 20. But the Pocophone F1, as I say, the camera update is coming in about a month or so, so that might change my mind on that side of things. And both of these smartphones rock impressive performance, great battery life, and really nice crisp, colourful displays as well. So which one are you more tempted by? Definitely let us know in the comments down below. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest mobile tech. Cheers everyone, love you!